Hello and welcome back to our sustainable journey. I am Steve. Today we're going to take a look at worm bins and see what's going on in there. Okay, so you have your worm bin, and you want to check on it every day. Some of you want to check on them every day. I don't. I usually check once a week. More if it's a new bin, I'll check on it. But what you're looking for is a bunch of different stuff, right? So I'm gonna move the worms off the top. Moisture content. Make sure that it's plenty wet, not too wet. You want to make sure that they're eating the food scraps. You want to see what other pests might be in there. So like here we got, like your pill bugs or your woodlouse, right on there. And just like a general health check and see, like, because the question always comes up of, well, how often do you feed them? When do you feed them? This bin needs to be fed, right? Because yeah, we say don't feed the worms until they finished off the last feeding. Well, it's hard to tell, right? Because there's a newspaper in here. There's like a chicken bone that would take them forever, right? And we need to put that in our hot compost. Here is a wine cork. That's gonna take them a while, right? So does that count? No, of course not. That doesn't count, because it's gonna take them months. But the rest of the food scraps are gone. They've been consumed, and so you're gonna want to feed this bin because there's no food in there for them. I mean, there's food in there technically. I mean, you see all this newspaper and other stuff in there. There's all sorts of microbes in here, I'm sure. But there's no actual food, so this bin needs to be fed. So let's look at the next one here. So, worms on the top, because that's what they do. Come on, buddy. Let's see if I can get you. No, it's really hard to pick up worms. Oh. Come on. Oh, almost had you. Almost. Oh no! He fell on the top of the bin. Alright, we'll get you. Oh, he's coming in that way. Haha, gotcha. Alright. Same thing with this bin, right? You've got sprouts growing. I'm guessing it's an avocado. What is it? Yes. No. Yes, that's an avocado. See, there's the shell. So we've got avocados growing. I should absolutely get an avocado growing. We just don't have the right climate for it. So I'm checking. Looking to see. There's, a compostable bag. Again, that's going to take the work. That should really go into our hot compost. Another chicken bone. Same thing. Put that in the hot compost. Because you need to consider what's left for them to eat. And the worms are healthy and happy and stuff. And you could technically go without feeding your worms for a couple of weeks. That comes up a lot too. Oh, I'm going on vacation. What do I need to do with my worms? Probably nothing. Unless you have a brand new bin, you can leave them be, right? So here's they're all over the top because that's what worms do. And it's been pretty muggy lately, so I'm assuming they're trying to get some fresh air, stay out of the heat. But what you want to look for is a mass exodus. So when you see a lot of dead worms on the floor or dried up worms or whatever, that means you got a problem and your bin's heated up. So that's another thing you're going to check for, right? So we're looking here, this one, and I'm kind of cheating here because this is technically a feeding day. So, but I wanted to just show you guys what to look for. You shouldn't see a lot of flies. You shouldn't see a lot of maggots. You shouldn't see little white worms. Those are not baby worms. Those are pot worms. And they usually show up in a bin when it is overly wet. Same thing with mites. Will show up when it's overly fed. Other pests will show up depending on what's going on in the bin. And so you constantly want to be monitoring them to see what other pests are showing up. Rubber band. They'll never get through that. We'll pull that out. So that's from the compost that was probably wrapped around some veggies. Like, here is a big wad of newspaper. That's gonna take forever, right? Another bone. But you can tell this bin definitely needs to be fed because there's nothing else. There's sticks, like these sticks. This is gonna take forever. And the other thing to consider is you are not a worm farmer, much as you'd like to think you are. You are an ecosystem maintainer, because worms are the biggest animal in the bin, I guess. But there is so much more breaking down that waste than just the worms. You have, like we have the wood louse, you've got little microorganisms, which is the whole idea, that are going to be breaking down this waste so that the worms can eat it. So there's a lot more in here than just worms. You should never just have worms. And you're not going to see the majority of these things. But you're going to want to watch for them and be aware that they're in there too. So just having worms is not what's happening. There's a lot more going on, because the other organisms break down the food so that the worms can actually eat it. Because it's not like the worms are walking up to your food scraps and just taking a bite out of them. It doesn't really work that way. Let's see. There's all kinds of stuff in these bins. Some of you get gnat and fruit fly infestations. That's usually a sign of overfeeding. And depending on where your bins are, you might get black soldier flies. So those are giant looking maggots. Usually people freak out about them. But they're actually good. They break down things better than worms do. But you don't necessarily want a lot of them in your bin because they like it hot. They will heat up the bin. And so you don't want a lot of them. A couple of them is fine, but a whole lot of them can cause you problems. So this is the bin that we created a few weeks ago, and you can see, like, they've gotten through just about everything. Like this, I mean, these look like finished castings. Like this looks great in here. This is the whole idea. This is what it should look like in your bin. Now, some people, I don't, but some people will go through every week and they call it fluffing the bin, and kind of digging through like this to aerate and whatnot. You do not need to do that ever. You can, I guess, if you like to play around with them and stuff, but you don't need to do that. It's not necessary. It's not important. Just like adding more bedding, you don't need to do it. Here's another one. This one's kind of dark because it's pretty far from the light and blocked off, but same idea. Everything looks good in here, right? This is what they should look like. I'm not going to go deeper than this, but you can see all of these bins. Here, I'll show one right under the light. All these bins look about the same. You've got your finished castings. We could probably sift these out, depending on how deep you go, because you can see the worms have done a great job of breaking all this stuff down. And there's a little bit of chunks, right? There's a few chunks, and obviously this big chunk, but everything else is pretty much done. Other things to watch out for when you're checking on your bins. They shouldn't smell. If they smell, that's a problem. It usually means it's gone anaerobic. So what happens is if you have the 2-tier bins, like we've got 2-tier bins, and so what'll happen is if liquids seep down into the bottom, they can get gross and it can smell. So if your bin smells, you're doing something wrong. It should smell kind of like, I don't know, the outside after it rains. Like that earthy humus smell is what your bins should smell like. Now, immediately after feeding them, like usually the day of or the day after we feed them, it might smell because if you're adding rotting food to your worm bin, sometimes it'll still smell because that smell will linger in the air, but beyond that, it never should. So when I first started, I had all these bins in my basement, and so on feeding day, the basement would stink. Well, the problem was I kept all my worm bins, they were right next to the furnace. So when we had the furnace going or the air conditioning going and the air was circulating, it would pick up all that air and our entire house would smell like rotting food for a couple hours when I was feeding. So there's another reason I'm out here in the workshop instead of doing this in my basement, is because we have so many bins like this that I would not be allowed to do this in the house. But yeah, I mean, look at that. I mean, except for these avocado pits, like this all looks great. So that's what your bins should look like. We usually let these ones, if I'm not going to dump them over into another one, I'll get them maybe half full. They start getting heavy otherwise. We've got, what, 29. We've got 29 of these bins. You know, if they get to be 50 pounds each, it's a lot of weight to move around. So, yeah, this is what your bins should look like. Could get a microscope out and show you some of the other animals and pests in here and organisms that are going on in here, but that's a perfect bin. That's what they're doing. They're breaking down the soil for us. And of course now they're all hiding because of all the lights, but yeah, these are perfect bins. These could just be sifted and put into the garden as they are. So don't put too much effort into it. It shouldn't be a lot of work, because if it is, you're probably overthinking it. Don't worry about it. Like, worms have been here long before us and they'll be here long after we're gone. So keep it low key. Don't stress about it. The worms will take care of themselves. They'll take care of your food scraps if you take care of them. You just make sure that their environment is a happy one that will promote breaking down of the food scraps and other organisms, right? So you don't necessarily want to kill things off in your bin because of, you have too many mites or something like that. Like, there's ways to remove mites. We'll talk about that. We'll probably talk about that next time, of how to remove some of these pests that get into your bins. Maybe I don't want to do an overfeeding. But I get to show you some of the pests that will pop into your bins every so often next time. So yeah, that's what to look for. All right. Take care. So this is our new kitty, and we've named her Annie because she's kind of an orphan, and because we have another cat named Rags. And so we thought Raggedy Ann and Andy. So we got Rags, who's obviously a ragdoll cat, but she is pregnant. That's why she's in here where she can be protected and safe and have plenty of food and plenty of water and her own safe space. She is she is our newest barn cat. So you say hello. All right.